into like some do's and don'ts for building a successful brand. There's a lot of things you shouldn't be doing either. Let's have Avery start us off on that.
I think for don'ts, one of my things would be, especially on the Wattpad platform, is like don't spam your story on other people's stories, comments, DMs. It's just not polite. Like there's appropriate avenues to do that, like book clubs and contests and that kind of thing. Like I personally just delete stuff like that. That's not your space. So it's not really an appropriate use of somebody else's space to do that. Yeah. And as far as do's go, I think we touched on like the consistency part. I think just have fun with it. Like if you're not enjoying the social media marketing efforts, like you're probably not going to be consistent or keep up with it. So I think you need to find a strategy that works for you. Even if it's not necessarily maybe as often as it, might be ideal, it still has to kind of fit in with your general plan in your life and be sustainable, because otherwise you're going to end up getting frustrated and probably not keep up with it at all. So I think just finding kind of that balance where you can like support your writing, but not have it take over your efforts.
Yeah, that could easily go the wrong way. How about let's hear from Crystal. What are some do's and don'ts you'd like to share?
I think my do for everybody is, especially when you are figuring out your brand, is to make sure it's authentic. Make sure you're choosing something that really represents you. Don't jump on a bandwagon. So I like to use the example of, if you're on TikTok and let's say A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas it's huge on TikTok, but you don't like that book, don't jump on that bandwagon as someone that likes that book. Choose things that are really speaking to you and that are showing people authentically who you are. The don't goes along with that is, although I want you to be authentic, I want you to come across as positive. When we sometimes start really putting out our negatives, and we're not doing it necessarily for an educational purpose, like you may struggle with certain things, mental disorders, or for me, I struggle with food, those type of things. We can talk about those in a healthy way, but when we're really getting negative and we're not giving our readers something to get to really know us, and they're seeing that yucky side, sometimes that's not the best idea. It can become turning off, and it can sound like you're looking for attention. If you really have a negative things to say, you really need to find a writer buddy, one person that you really, really trust, and go and voice your negative thoughts with them and have that conversation there. You don't necessarily want to have those with your readers.
Yeah, don't make your garbage public, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. How about Nikki? What are some do's and don'ts you'd like to share?
Yeah, so a major do, I would say, is that have an ideal reader in mind when you're making anything for your brand. So, like every time before I post, I think if what I'm saying would resonate with my ideal reader. Like, does it match the tone that I've always used? For example, I use a lot of GIFs, and I like to talk about what's going on in my life university-wise, because that resonates a lot with my audience. And I think, and I really like talking about my life and seeing how my readers are doing as well. If you're a hardcore sci-fi writer, maybe your readers would like if you talked about the connection to science, or I don't know, science jokes. But like, as cheesy as it sounds, I think being you and being authentic, and not trying to change your personality or try to be like someone else, like Crystal was saying, your readers are really going to connect with you and who you are. And a don't, I would say, is that like, don't just stay on social media, because you don't own any of the social media platforms, and any day they could decide to limit your organic reach and you can't reach the people who follow you. So I really recommend having a website and a newsletter where like you can reach readers directly right in their inbox. Yeah, so those are my do's and don'ts.
That was also great advice. All right, we've got some questions from the audience here. Let's go with, how do you balance writing and managing your social medias? It's hard to do both efficiently. I can identify with that. Anyone want to jump in with this one?
I procrastinate by doing social media.
That's one way.
So I'm not saying I recommend it, but that's how it fits in for me. Or if I'm stuck, sometimes I go onto Pinterest, or I will make graphics almost to just like get the juices flowing again. Like it sometimes actually helps me. So
I feel like it's not really fair.
I'm going to turn this over to Felicity.
It's not fair. It's not fair for either of us to answer this, Crystal, because there's two of us. So yeah, it's not fair.
But I will say, but I do want to say that one thing that Felicity does really great, because she runs our TikTok, is that she does things ahead of time. So she will, when she has a moment, because we write together and we're not writing, she'll take an hour, 2 hours just to sit down and make TikToks. And so she's sitting there with them. She gets them all ready, and she doesn't necessarily put the text on them. She doesn't know what it's going to be about. She just picks something that's trending that she thinks is kind of fun, and she could perhaps turn that into something bookish, and then she'll post it later. So just utilizing your free moments to set up what you're going to post in the future is a great idea. Kind of having like a week's worth of stuff or a few days worth of stuff, so you're not stressing about social media every single day.
Yeah, just use whatever like little moments you have. That's what I try to do.
Yeah, I do the same thing. Is any little moment I have, record something and use it later.
Yep.
Yeah, I definitely feel that struggle. I'm like a full-time university student and trying to write and social media, and sometimes I feel like I'm always dropping some ball that I'm juggling. But a major tip, like Crystal and Felicity were saying, I think is batching tasks, because like when I get into the flow of making a bunch of graphics or making a bunch of TikToks, like I feel like I get them done a lot faster. So batching tasks I find really helps, and then that also helps with staying consistent across it, because you're batching the tasks, making sure they're all the same like aesthetic or same like branding across them all. And I find that really helps me to and I also like scheduling posts, if you can, on like Instagram and things like that, like scheduling them ahead of time, so then they just go out without you needing to be there. And that also really helps me.
Scheduling is a great idea. All right, so let's go to the next question. How would someone who doesn't want to show their face go about making a TikTok platform? All my friends feel I should, and I've done a podcast to encourage me to be more out there, but I like to be private. So on TikTok, it's all about video. So what are some ideas that this person could utilize?
Yeah, I don't show my face on TikTok, and I don't have the biggest TikTok following, but mainly I share a lot of snippets of my writing, quotes, things like that, and also like videos you can take of. I've done some like day in the life where I don't show my face, but I just show like my writing routine, or just a day in my life as a writer, things like that. Have worked really well for me on TikTok. I don't know if you guys have any other ideas for ones without your face, but also like finding inspiration, like just scrolling and looking at what other people are doing and like following trends. Yeah,
I got one. You can. I love doing these, and I show my face all the time, but I love doing these on. Make them on Canva, and I made one the first time I made it, and I've saved it, and I just used it as a template every time. Aesthetics for books, trying to convince you to read whatever book by its aesthetic, and so it's like a 15-second video, and the pictures go by really fast. And it could be one of our Wattpad books, someone else's Wattpad book, a published book, whatever it may be. And I just find pictures on Canva Pro or Pinterest or whatever, and you don't have to show your face for that at all. You find a song that goes well with the aesthetic for whatever book it is you're trying to convince people to read, and people love those because they see the pictures, they like the music. You might even put a quote with it, and you don't have to show your face for that at all. And people love those aesthetic videos, so that's a good one to do.
Yeah,
and you make
definitely.
it one time, and that's it. You just replace the pictures.
I think of something like, the artist Marshmallow, like putting big marshmallow on your head and going out there. It's funny, but it's also a brand for marshmallow.
Oh, true,
so
yeah.
you want to, so even if it's not showing your face, and maybe you have like some weird stuffed animal that does weird things, like it's going to read a story, or it's going to participate, or your animals in your house are going to participate in the videos. You don't have to show you. You can get a little creative. And I mean, if you want to cut out eye holes out of a paper bag and stick it on your head, go for it. And then you'll be known as a person on Book Talk that has a paper bag over
or
their
like
head.
one of those weird styrofoam heads. Like,
yeah, like any of that stuff. So, and sometimes those funny videos will, just for the funny factor, it will pull in so many views. So don't be scared to play around with that kind of stuff and get a little silly, because really most of the people are looking for something to make them laugh on TikTok. So that kind of stuff will work.
People love silly.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. We have another question here. On Pinterest, do you post illustrations you've commissioned, or stock images or found images that you think work as being representative of your story? I guess what are you allowed to post on safely on Pinterest?
Yeah, I mainly use stock images, and then I'll use like quotes over top of the image from my own book, and so it's all content that's free to use, stock photos that you can find on Canva, and that's mainly what I use on Pinterest. Yeah. So,
So they definitely should not be finding random images on Google and using those, right?
No.
No, yeah. No.
That's a no-no.
But you could on Pinterest, if you found like a board, as long as it's still being, accredited to the creator of that, you can make a board for your book that maybe if you're doing a historical romance. And so you find like clothing that you think your characters would wear, as long as you're not taking that picture and making it route back to your Wattpad, you're fine putting that on a board and naming the board what the name of your book is, and then putting other things in the board that are uniquely yours and routing those things back over to your Wattpad.
Yeah, as long as you give people credit, that's the important part.
Yeah.
All right, let's do another question. We've got a lot here. How do you identify your target reader so you can find where they are?
For me personally, I write for people. I write for myself as my target audience. So it's easy for me because I write for like the new adult age range, and so it's pretty easy for me personally. But just thinking of like who you think is reading your book, that it's very hard to do. Like I think it's not an easy thing, and it's something that took me a while, and it also helped me like being able to share my writing because I was vulnerable with what I was writing. I feel like I'm pretty vulnerable with what I write, and like just thinking of this is meant for this one person. And sometimes if I get hate or things like that, I just know that maybe they're not my ideal reader and the person that the book is meant for. But that's not really helpful in understanding who your ideal reader is. You guys have any thoughts about that?
I think you have to play around. So you see something really works. So let's say you're putting something up on Instagram, and one, you want to play with the tags on Instagram. If you're not tagging, if you're only putting things up in your story where you can't tag anything, you're doing yourself a disservice. Make sure on Instagram that you are putting things down where it's actually getting posted and that you are tagging them, just like you want to tag your book in Wattpad, and you want to have relevant tags. And when you see, it's a little bit of a scientific little project for you. You want to sit down and go, okay, I got a great response out of this. What were the tags I was using? And you're going to play around with that stuff a little bit and see how you can reach new people and get new people to respond to you. So, and then once you kind of get it, you run with it. Now you know what you need to be tagging your stuff on Instagram. And you just want to every once in a while put something else in there, because if you tag the same things all the time, you will come across as spam. So be careful with that too. You want to use a variety of tags that you know are good for you in your story.
Tags.
So basically,
tags.
basically use tags and help people find you versus you hunting them down.
Yes.
Exactly.
Another thing I was going to say real quick is I think like not to copy their strategy, but ideally as an author, you should have some comparable authors that are like in a similar lane. So if you know that your writing is like Willow Winters, I'm just going to use her because she slays on TikTok, then what platforms is she doing well on? Like that's a really good way to find out where you're probably going to be successful as well.
That's one of the first things that they ask you, like when we signed on with Wattpad Books, when we filled out our sheet, that's one of the first things they ask is what authors would you compare yourself to? What books comparable works? So that's super important to do, is figure out who's in your lane, whose lane are you in, I guess, and see what they're doing. What tags are they using, because something is clearly working for them. So I think tags are super important.
Do your homework.
Yeah, I can't think of anything more important.
All right, I think we've got time for another question. All right, this one goes, what does better when capturing attention on social media? Using a quote or a book mock-up or a brief summary, or what? Or maybe a mix of all of the above?
I'd say a snippet from the book, like a quote from from the text itself. I wouldn't say a summary. I'd say something from the text. That's what I find works for us.
I find that the ones that seem to do best are like the most, either it's dialogue that's funny.
Dialogue, yeah. Yes.
Or something that's spicy.
Spicy, yes.
I was going to say
funny.
spice.
Yes.
If it's spicy, it'll work.
Spicy and funny.
And keeping it something, remember, you only have so long to capture someone's attention. So you don't want to do like a whole, until you've kind of
Big old
got
long
yourself
thing.
established, you don't want to have anything where somebody's like, it feels like a daunting task, like, oh my gosh, I have to pause this and read all this. So in the beginning, what we did with TikTok was a lot of the dialogue, like Zoe was talking about, where it was just really quick, 15 seconds of dialogue back and forth. And we put it, because we write paranormal romance, so it would be him and her, and it would just go back and forth. So we didn't even put the dialogue tags in there. You just got an idea of like, oh, that's him, that's her, that's him, that's her. So it was like really quick, and that was kind of how we started off with that stuff, and it worked really well.
All right. Well, I think we're running out of time here. We did have a lot of great questions. So if your viewers have more that you want to ask, a lot of us have expo booths. So feel free to visit any of our booths when we're there, and we can probably answer some of your questions there. Yeah. And so up next, the panel is probably one you don't want to miss. It's From Wattpad to the Big Screen, demystifying the process of how a Wattpad story turns into a movie or TV series. That's going to be an interesting talk. So thank you all for watching us, and I hope you do well on all your social media. Good luck to everybody. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.